Thank you very much, Peter. And Peter's given me some marching instructions to try and catch up on some time. So we'll try and go through this rather short presentation as swiftly as possible. I'm going to just go through the requirements of the new pharmacovigilance legislation that really bring us to this meeting. The scope of the change of that legislation that impacts on the area of ADR reporting and the requirements for promoting and raising awareness of the reporting systems. Have a bit of a focus on incident reporting in the UK, not just for ADRs, but on medication error as a whole, and some of the other cases that come across our desks at the national agencies as well. Then have a look at, very briefly, what happens in the rest of Europe, and then some activity on raising awareness. So the legislation which came into effect last July was very broad-ranging. It covered lots more than ADR reporting. It actually touched on everything in the product life cycle. But with regard to ADR reporting, there was a change of definition of adverse drug reaction. Here you can see the previous definition, which was a response to a medicinal product which is noxious and unintended and occurs at doses normally used in man, etc. The new definition is much more simplified, much broader, if you like, that it is simply a response to a medicinal product which is noxious and unintended. It doesn't mention anything about dose or at normal use. So it will include non-serious reports, error reports, off-label reports, expected, and also brings in patient reporting and reporting from the various post-authorization studies that take place. And this is probably of most interest to pharmaceutical industry colleagues because there's a whole new set of reporting requirements on the pharma industry. However, there's also new responsibilities on the member states, and I won't read this rather busy slide in full, but effectively it says that the member states should operate a pharmacovigilance system to collect ADRs, which include ADRs outside the terms of the marketing authorization, including abuse, misuse, and error. And that we should operate a quality management system for the management of these reports and have systems in place to allow us to gather follow-up information. So there's a clear responsibility on every member state to operate a robust and effective pharmacovigilance system. But when we think about incident reporting, there are a number of players in the system, and a number of reports come across my desk on a regular basis that are for the MHRA, but maybe are for other bodies and have been reported to us in error. And we should also consider that reports are going to these other bodies when they should be coming to us. And I think this is a part of the system across the board and probably in other countries as well. But let's understand where our reports come from. About half of our reports come from the pharmaceutical industry, and the rest are made up from healthcare professionals and patients, and it's around 50-50, and in the UK we get around 26,000 spontaneous cases a year. And on the far right there you can see that we get around 600 reports of medication error. And if you stack that up against what David was saying earlier, that's very few reports coming to the MHRA of cases of medication error that are going somewhere or maybe nowhere at all. So the next few slides are just looking at some of the reports that have come into the MHRA over the last couple of years, and I'm posing a question: is this a reportable case or is it not a reportable case under the new rules? So in this one, a consultant wrote to a GP asking them to provide 6 mercaptopurine 50 milligram tablets once a day, but the GP misunderstood this and prescribed 6 tablets daily. So is this an ADR? No, it's not. There's no evidence of harm. There is nothing in that report to suggest that the patient experienced any harm from this error. It is, however, a medication error and should have probably gone to the NHS Commissioning Board, as it now is, through the National Reporting and Learning Service, which is the system used in the UK for reporting medication error. Similarly, this report, the patient was given Claricid in 10 mils of saline but they didn't add the diluent. Again, is this an ADR? No. Again, there's no evidence of harm. So that also should have gone to the NRLS and not to the MHRA. This gets a bit more tricky and brings into context some of the other players in the system. Now, here's a patient who self-administered something. It's not in the text here, but had a rather nasty asthma attack as a result. And gradually, the asthma attack receded. But the question is why did that come to us? Is it an ADR? No, the product in case in here was an insect repellent. And should have gone to the Trading Standards Institute, probably. But this is a demonstration of probably the confusion in the reporting systems, that people are reporting to the wrong regulator, the wrong type of case. This is my favourite one, and there's a bit of a giveaway in the text here, but a rather nasty case where the anaesthesia caused a reaction and the patient suffered cardiac arrest and died. Can anyone see the giveaway in the text as to why that shouldn't have been for us? Is it an ADR? Yes, of course it is an ADR. But the patient was not just a cat, but a female domestic short-hair feline, as described in the ADR report that came from a pharmaceutical company to us. That should, of course, have gone to the Veterinary Medicines Directorate in the UK. On the other side, there are reports that should have come to the MHRA, but have gone to other parts of the incident reporting network. And here's a case where there was a seizure experienced in a patient in hospital. She fractured her humerus. It went to the NRLS as a medication error. Should really have come to the MHRA on a yellow card, I would suggest. It is, of course, an ADR. So there are, David runs a system called the National Reporting and Learning Service, and true ADRs are often sent to that database, but it has a different nature of the way the cases are recorded. And whilst we have a data sharing agreement in place, which I'll touch on in a moment, the nature of how these cases are recorded are very different. Often the patient details aren't as sufficient as they would be on a yellow card form. Often the reporter is anonymous in this system. That's the way it was originally set up, as an anonymous without blame reporting system. Sometimes the drug information isn't as structured or as detailed as you might get on a yellow card, and similarly for the reaction information. And follow-up of these cases is problematic because of the anonymous nature of them, or because they're centrally reported through a reporting person responsible within an NHS trust. So I would suggest that ADRs that are where harm has occurred should be reported on yellow cards in the UK, and in other territories use the spontaneous reporting system locally. So what to report and to whom? Now, if there is no harm on a human medicinal product, in the UK, the MHRA should be the reporting point regardless. If there is no harm, but it's a medication error, that is something that should go through the NRLS to the NHS Commissioning Board. If it's not a human, or if it's a cosmetic or a food or another substance, there is probably another body in your territory, either something equivalent to a Food Standards Agency, a Trading Standards, the health executives, etc., health and safety executives, all have their own reporting systems, and it's no wonder that there's confusion in the system. So patient safety bodies, whatever they're responsible for, need to have data sharing agreements in place, and we have one with David's body to ensure that the reports are identified and shared to the right responsible agency. Sometimes confidentiality issues need to be addressed. There are concerns over anonymizing certain information, and these need to be thought through when you're bringing together any data sharing arrangements. So as I said, we have a data sharing agreement in place for the last few years. We screen our data on a weekly basis and provides every medication error, regardless of harm, to David's agency. We're responsible for looking at the pharmacovigilance aspects of a case, but the commissioning board have a responsibility to look at issues for learning for the NHS, and that will be similar in other countries. So we know that there's a lot of confusion in the system. We know that there are different bodies for different types of cases. And we posed the question about a year ago before the new legislation came into effect, to see if the UK was representative of the rest of Europe and what's happening in the rest of Europe. So we did a survey, and we had 12 respondents, as you can see there, and 11 out of 12 did collect medication error reports as part of their pharmacovigilance system. So that's good. 7, similarly to the UK, also have a separate public body responsible to address learning from error cases where harm has occurred, but also where no harm has occurred, also the near misses, etc. 4 of the other 12 had local systems in place, typically in poisons units, to take care of this at a local level. But what we saw, and what we've seen in the UK, is that levels of reporting are low. We only get about 600 cases to us a year, and that was a reporting rate of a similar nature in some of the other countries. Some had even much lower reporting rates than that. You'll hear about signal detection methodologies more tomorrow, but the whole purpose of collecting this data is to identify safety issues coming out of the reports. But none of us had specific signal detection methodologies in place for looking for cases of error. There are different ways to query databases, but automated signal detection tools are probably not as advanced as they should be in detecting signals for error. But 5 out of the 12 plan to make changes to their collection systems to start operating data sharing agreements and to upgrade some IT to accommodate the new requirements. One of the things that we need to do as a member state and a national competent authority for pharmacovigilance is to raise awareness of these issues and to encourage the reporting of ADRs, including ADRs for medication error, to consumers, to healthcare professionals, to get involved with the national reporting systems. Again, going back to the earlier slide, how we've done this in the UK is try to understand where our reports come from, the nature of those reports, and what groups we need to target to raise these messages with. And if you're in the UK, you may have over the past few weeks picked up some media stories in the professional media about the yellow card scheme, because we've been actively trying to get stories out there to encourage reporting of yellow cards. And one of the things we've done, and this is being done in other member states as well, is to come up with a strategy to encourage reporting. What we've done in the UK, if we focus on the second bubble there on clarity, is what to report and when. So, for example, with medication error, we've upgraded our yellow card reporting site, and one of the fields that we've got in there, if you can see on your screen, is a button that asks directly the question, is this a result of a medication error? And if you click yes, the free text box comes up for you to put in the information of why you think it's an error. But we shouldn't stop there, and one of the things that we've been doing in the UK is working with a variety of IT systems that are used in clinical care. And these systems are just examples of the ones we're actively engaged with at the moment, and they cross from general practice to secondary care to pharmacy, and across the NHS there's a body called Connecting for Health that have applied the ADR reporting as a IT standard, an NHS information standard. And this is, if you see on this graph, has reversed the declining trend in reporting from general practice, and we're very encouraged to see that by facilitating reporting from IT systems, we can take measures to encourage better reporting. But thinking specifically about medication error, maybe we need to go a step further and add additional IT measures that pick up the cases of medication error. There are different systems for reporting those to the NRLS. They don't interact with the yellow card systems. So we need to be thinking in the future as to how we can marry up these systems so that the right body gets the right report at the right time. There are other changes that we need to communicate. This is just an example of the responsibilities on a member state. There's a new system for looking at additional monitoring, new drugs on the market that will be accompanied by a black symbol. And as part of our communication messages to stakeholders, it's not just about report yellow cards to the MHRA, it's about report the right type of report. We're particularly interested in new drugs, we're particularly interested in medication error, off-label use, etc. And we need to get all of these messages out in a concise and understandable way, and that's the challenge to all of us. So one of the ways of doing this, and every member state, and the EMA as well, has a requirement to have an information portal. And these are very important to get those messages out. And we're all thinking about how we can best structure our websites to provide accurate, concise, meaningful information to stakeholders. And this is an example of the MHRA's webpage where we've drilled down and separated some of the important safety features for stakeholders. So you can see there, you can access drug safety update, for example, which is our monthly news bulletin, drug analysis prints, which list the ADRs that we've received, etc., and a link to the yellow card form. And these are the sorts of measures that we all need to be taking. So in summary, and I hope I met your expectations on time, the ADR definition is now much broader, and PV systems need to be capturing new and important safety information. But the national reporting systems are complex. There are a number of players involved, there are a number of actors involved in the system, and we need to talk to each other, share information with each other so that the data is getting to the right place. But where harm occurs in a medicine, it should be reported to the National Competent Authority for Pharmacovigilance. But member states need to communicate these changes and other important information to stakeholders. So thank you very much.
Tasha, just one little word. David Cousins said making errors is part of human condition. And when I introduced the session, I said that Mick was co-chairing it, but in fact he's not. It was an error. And in fact, just to introduce Sabine Brosch, head of the Eurovigilance system and the policy lead in terms of international standardization in drug safety, who is the co-chair with Kasia. And my apologies, Sabine. Don't blame me. It's a no-blame culture here when it comes to mistakes.
It is absolutely a no-blame culture. Thank you very much, Mick. I take from your presentation that it's crucially important for all the member states to absolutely make it very clear in messages to patients and the public what agencies are there and which types of reports should go where. And it was a very valuable presentation. So without further ado, does anyone have a really burning immediate question that needs to be answered? Please identify yourself.
Yeah, thank you. Tony West, European Association of Hospital Pharmacists, but day job, Guy's and St Thomas's in London. I'd be interested in David Cousins' view. Certainly our hospital has taken the view that where there's harm in relation to an error, we report through both mechanisms. So we send a report to the MHRA, but we also report it through our in-house system, which then feeds the NRLS. And the reason for that is because without that, there would be no record of that within our organisation. And so it becomes very difficult for us to do the learning unless we've recorded it.
I totally agree that remember that healthcare providers are going to have incident reports of all types of harm, infection control, devices, radiation, and will have a structured system as to how they as a provider assess the risk and local actions that they need to take before they report it onward. And so we need to satisfy, and indeed the patient will require this of us, albeit that yellow cards are important, but how are you going to treat me? And, the incidents involving me, reporting it to somebody, whoever they are, isn't going to take care of my immediate situation. So I think we need to work this through. I think it's perfectly possible to work through and tick the boxes and the competent authorities get the information and the follow-up that they require. But the way that we tackle this will have to be different from traditional ADR reporting, because the provider organizations are going to take far more care as to who's reporting from their organization, what actions that they need to take. This is, political dynamite if you're reporting errors. This isn't like a naughty, when you're saying this is a naughty medicine, kindly sort it out. This is often to do with naughty actions of healthcare providers or healthcare professionals. And so I think we just need to work that through, but it's possible. And I think we can perhaps establish a model with the MHRA and the NRLS, which achieves this in the short term.
I just support what David was saying there. One of the things that I think is a great shame in the last couple of years in the UK, there was a real initiative a couple of years ago to introduce something called Patient Safety Direct, which would have been a single reporting system or a window to a single reporting system. That unfortunately has been put on ice. I would like to see that for easing the confusion in the system, that whatever the nature of an incident that is reportable, clinicians and healthcare providers don't need to think about what system they need to go into. There's one window, and that system is intelligent enough to deliver the report to the right body.